Hey, I am back. I told y'all that I have several book talks I want to do with you over the books that I have read and finished over the last couple of weeks or so. So, this particular book talk is on The Unteachables by Gordan Korman. I have yet to read a book by Gordan Korman that I did not like. The famous Gordan Korman book that you have, the Juvie 3, I think I read by my students. All of his books are different. What I love about Gordan Korman, along with some other authors, is he's very versatile in the subjects. He doesn't just write for what I call the middle grade. He also writes for high school. If I'm not mistaken, he's also the famous author of Jesus. I forgot that book already. But it's basically it's a Romeo and Juliet story. But the guy who's dating the girl, the guy is a son of a mobster, and he's dating a girl who is the daughter of an FBI agent who's investigating the mob. I cannot think of it right now, and once I think of it, I'll tell you about it. I never finished that book, but I heard it's very good. But it's like a Romeo and Juliet story, and there's a lot of other stories that he has. Swindle, which turned into a movie on Nickelodeon, and he has a whole bunch of other books that I love and I adore, and I have a whole collection of his books in my library. So, of course, when I see Gordan Korman with the new one, which I haven't seen in a while, I had to pick it up. This book was funny. That's one thing about Gordan Korman. He has the serious subjects and whatnot, but he's mainly known as a comical author to me. And Unteachables was like everything that was wrong with education was written in this book. And like, okay, you have the main character. They call him Mr. Kermit or Mr. Ribbit, but his name is Kermit. And basically, he's been scarred in his teaching career by a cheating scandal. One of his students somehow got copies of the test or the answers to the test, gave it to his Mr. Kermit students. He didn't know about it, so they got praised for having the highest scores and the perfect scores. And when they found out they were all cheating, the principal, who is now the superintendent now, has vowed that he would ruin Mr. Kermit's life for the rest of his life. Now, what I didn't understand, which is totally against protocol, Mr. Kermit was allowed to teach in all these different curriculums. The reality is you can't teach in certain places unless you have certification. Like at one point, because he's up for early retirement, and the superintendent believes that the Kermits are known for living a very long life, he is determined that he is not going to let Mr. Kermit retire early, because that means I have to support you for the rest of your life, and they're known for living up to their 90s, and I refuse to support this man for the rest of his life. He is that petty. And petty is not even the word I want to use. So he vows to somehow get him fired so Mr. Kermit cannot retire early. So Mr. Kermit doesn't care. They reassign him to a special ed class, which again is everything wrong with education. I think it's revealing some truth about education, but also what should not be done in education. All these kids are in this special ed room, and they're actually considered self-contained. Okay, they're stuck in this room because they don't do well successfully. The reality is there are different levels of special education. Well, all these kids are pushed into this room. They're only allowed to come out during enrichments. They even sometimes block it where the kids can't go to different special programs. So you have the main character, Kia, who actually isn't technically enrolled in the school. She gets someone scheduled. She goes to class. Mr. Kermit doesn't check roles, so he doesn't realize towards the end that she was never supposed to be in the class in the first place because she's too smart. Yeah. And you have another young man, because he's 14, Parker. He drives, and he's able to drive because he's responsible for taking his grandmother, who's going through, it was either Alzheimer's or dementia, and he has to drive her to the senior center every day while he's at school, and his mom and dad works the farm. He's allowed to have a provisional license, so he drives to school every day. You have another young man in the class who was known as the all-star, who was known as an awesome athlete, but because he is now crippled and he can't play, they stopped having him in regular classes, and now they put him in special ed because they claim he can't do the work. You have another guy who's obsessed with Star Trek and comics. You have another guy who falls asleep all the time. And you find out as you read the story why these people are going through these troubles. Like, we learned that Parker is dyslexic. And no one has done anything and given him any. None of these kids have an IEP, which is an individual educational plan to help you achieve certain goals so you can close those gaps. None of these kids have that. Matter of fact, at first, Kermit, all he did was come in the room with his crossword puzzles and his coffee, and he made sure the kids did a worksheet. He didn't teach them, he didn't speak to them or anything. Well, ironically, a new teacher is assigned next to him, and the new teacher is the daughter of Mr. Kermit's once fiance. And it's like his life fell apart after this cheating scandal. He was scarred and he was like pushed around. And that's something I'll admit I have witnessed in education, where you have teachers where legally you have no reason to fire them, but you keep them, you give them sometimes the worst students in the school, and you know they don't have good behavior management. Yeah, I'm telling it, but it's the truth. So basically, he's been pushed around in an effort to get him to retire early. But Kermit's determined he's going to finish the school year out. And he's going to retire early. And there's some hiccups that come in the way because, again, the superintendent is determined, I'm going to find a loophole. I'm going to find a way to null his contract and get him fired. So basically, you try to find out, number one, what type of relationship does the Unteachables establish with Kermit? Will they ever establish a relationship? Mr. Kermit. Imagine if you look at the cover right here, you notice you see the lizard, who that was actually the lizard from the teacher's classroom next door to him, and roasting marshmallows over a trash can. That was actually the first scene, not the first scene of the book, but as you're walking into the classroom, is a fire going in a trash can, and the kids are roasting marshmallows in this classroom. And they literally are called the Unteachables. The students call them the Unteachables. The teachers call them the Unteachables. The superintendent calls them the Unteachables. But what I love about the story, and I'm trying to give you a little bit without giving you too much, it really shows everything wrong and everything that could be right with education if we do certain things. Remembering why we are here, why teachers are here, why do we do what we do. And that's why I would definitely recommend that teachers and principals and students all read this book, and I hope you will learn the valuable lessons that come out of it. And I want to tell you the valuable lessons, but I feel like I'm gonna give away the book. But when I say this is a very good book, and I forgot to mention that Kaya, what happened was on her way to school, and this is the first chapter, she's staying with her dad because her mom's on a movie set, and staying with her dad and her stepmom. On the way to the school, her stepbrother gets sick. He's a baby, and she takes off to get him straight. She said, well, you can get registered. And the lady said, well, we can't register you until your parent comes. So she just takes it upon herself to take the schedule that she thought she had in her hand that was hers. Come to find out it was Parker's. So she ends up in Parker's class, but she refuses to leave the class because that means she has to go and do real work. So it's an interesting story when you go from there. And again, this is definitely, Gordan Korman has tons of other books. And the name of the book I was telling you earlier about is called Son of the Mob. And the sequel to it is called Son of the Mob, Hollywood Hustle. So definitely peek those out. I know I need to find them myself and read them myself. And again, Gordan Korman, you cannot go wrong with this author. Happy reading.